This is Jake Ciely, and I'm the blown ACL that ruins your football season.
Good news, everyone! Let's get dangerous. This is so good!
I know!
It feels so right!
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman. Pretending not to know. Earth's greatest mastermind!
You just made the list!
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you ducks. I know it's been a while. I don't know if anybody from the 90s cannot say that and not sing at the same time. But it's the off-season. Not going to be here every single week, but I will be checking in plenty. Going to talk some Dynasty today and the coaching cycle after the Super Bowl. I'll do an episode about way too early rankings. We'll hit free agency, rookies, the NFL draft, all the good stuff. Here and there in between, probably every other week, every third week, depending on the flow. I don't want to inundate you guys with a lot of meaningless stuff, just in my opinion, because there's a lot of, hey, well, what's the best landing spot? And then it doesn't matter at the end of the day anyway, because that's not where the player goes. But before we jump in real quick, a thank you to everybody who subscribed, rates, reviews, shares, because the best podcast or best football podcast of the year nomination for the FSWA, or finalist, not nomination. Well, I guess it's both. But anyway, all that doesn't happen without you guys. So thank you. Continue to please share for everybody. But let's jump into Dynasty ranks that I want to talk about real quick, and then coaching changes, probably a little bit more important for everybody. But real quick on the Dynasty side, if you guys are playing, I did point out that one of my main, I'm going to talk strategy. One of my main strategies is that if I'm starting up a fresh draft, I actually do like getting quarterbacks earlier than most people would think. Different from redraft, obviously, but also different in general because I'm the type that I don't like having 4 or 5 quarterbacks clogging up my bench. I know Dynasty's a little bit different, that you don't need to worry about clogging up your bench too much, but it's different for every league, and I like having that person that I know I can just set it and forget it, so to speak. Obviously, you need a second person, but I like to get a top-end quarterback, probably top 6 or 7, and then after that, get another one inside the top 16-ish range. To give you an idea, my top 7, number 7 is Patrick Mahomes, and then from 8 to, oh, there you go, about 16 and maybe 15, depending on how you feel, but you drop down to C.J. Stroud, 8 is Caleb Williams, to give you an idea, and there are some older quarterbacks behind that, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, but anyway, the point is I'd rather have 2, maybe 3, obviously take a flyer on a third, than to clog up the bench. Again, I know some people think differently, but I just hate having 5 quarterbacks. It's the same thing with tight ends, too. And, well, differently, but the same, as in the fact that people take all these flyers hoping one's going to break out, and then you're playing mix and match and trying to turn into trades. I'm just not a fan of it. I know some people are. I saw some people in the comments debate it. But I like getting the quarterback. I like not having to worry about it every single year. And that's my opinion there. To speak of tight ends real quickly is I think they get overrated in Dynasty. You see everybody trying to hope that you hit on a Bowers or McBride. But the truth is with those, a lot of it is draft capital that we already knew about. And on top of it, there's only 4 or 5 real difference makers. And then you see people with 6 tight ends, 5 tight ends, because they take all these flyers on the Chigakonkwus and the Kate Ottens. And look, if you're in that realm, I don't hate, like, you can't, every single team can't have a top 6 tight end, obviously, or top 5 difference maker. But at the same time, if you're in that realm, stop carrying 6 of them. I'm in one of those leagues where I don't have one, and I have about 3 of those options. Just because, again, another one is I'd rather have on my bench running backs, wide receivers. Those have more upside, and then you could potentially turn one of those into a trade for a tight end. Actually, and one of my other leagues did that. I turned one of them into a trade for Harold Fannin earlier this year. And stupid manager, I don't know why he drafted Fannin just to turn around and trade him in his rookie season, but there you go. He needed wide receivers, and that was really what it came down to. For running backs, it's the offseason. I think you guys know this, but trade your running backs now. Unless the running back has a clear role and contract that they're not going to lose their job, move on. We see this every single year, the risk of these running backs getting somebody drafted, added in free agency. There's a lot of free agent running backs this year. Draft class is not as strong, but the free agency is going to make a difference there. And all it takes is one signing, one change team, and that value potentially goes out the window. And it's more the fact that it goes out the window more than it skyrockets. And that's the risk there. So yes, Kenneth Walker, if he ends up on a team that treats him like a bell cow, could see huge value jump into the top 10, at least the top 12. But more likely than not, for the other ones, we just saw with Chase Brown, which, by the way, I actually do think is a nice sell high right now. Chase Brown, they wanted to use Samaje Perine. They kept using Samaje Perine when he's healthy. What if they draft or sign somebody to timeshare? His value as it is right now is assuming the best case scenario for Chase Brown. So there's a good example. My point being is that there's only room for it to go down. If you get the good value, then of course you're like, I'm not saying you have to trade these people, to be clear. I'm just saying they're opportunities. All of it's relative in the value, especially when I get to the buys and sells. Running back, same case, late 20s, especially coming on that second contract, which you never know what it might be, but at the same time, late 20s is where they start to possibly lose some value, and those are opportunities I look to get away from, similar to trading wide receivers, but more so the early 30s. I'm not afraid of the age 30 season. Look at Devontae Adams, even going further than that. Heck, Mike Evans was a good buy low for year after year after year after year until he finally got hurt this year. But I think that once you get to 31, 32 is really where you start to think about it. And then rookies, as you guys know, if you do play Dynasty, are always overvalued, especially the draft picks. You can get so much. That is, I think, one of the most exploitable areas is rookies and draft picks and what you can get in return value for them, because everybody wants the shiny new toy and everybody wants to potentially get a Bijan Robinson or Jamar Chase super cheap. And more often than not, it's really good players. It's just not to that level. And anyway, point being is that's really where you make out. So here are some of my buys and sells before we get to the coaching changes. Buys, I do like Cam Ward. We'll talk about him in a second. Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, obviously that situation presents a buy if Walker ends up at bell cow, Charbonnet, Walker doesn't come back, and they don't add anybody of significance. Again, but those are relative because that might not happen. It's just opportunities. And there might be people out there that might be like, oh, Kenneth Walker's going to end up in a spot, and they won't trade him for anything less than like a first rounder. So it's all relative. But Jonathan Brooks, I think, is a good buy for the Panthers. I know that it's 2 injuries in a row, and we don't know what he might be, but everybody kind of forgot that he's still there. Rico Dowdle, probably gone. I would almost bet money he's gone. So opportunity for Jonathan Brooks, and we saw that Chuba Hubbard kind of falter last year. Bashal Tutin, just on the case that Travis Etienne is not with this team. Even though you guys know I'm a kind of a Tutin timeshare kind of guy, and I think that he could be the lead of a timeshare, this is an opportunity where if Etienne's gone and they don't add a significant piece. Caleb Johnson, remember him? He's basically free on the Steelers, depending on what happens there. Trey Benson coming back from injury again, but James Conner at this point of his career also coming back from injury again. Trey Benson, I think, is another forgotten name. At wide receiver, Torrey Horton, also injury, but could be the number 2 for the Seahawks next year. I know the Shaheed situation kind of clusters that up a little bit, but Torrey Horton I like. Jaden Higgins, you know he's my boy. A little bit disappointing, and yes, still have Jalen Noel, and Tank Dell could come back from injury, but Tank Dell, by the way, I don't think a lot of people realize how old he is. Not that he's super old, but older than people realize. But Steve Smith was on a podcast talking up Jaden Higgins, which is always nice to see a former NFL wide receiver of his ilk talking up a player. So Higgins I like as a buy low. Devonta Smith, especially if A.J. Brown is gone, but just coming off a bad year in general. Again, we'll talk about the coaching changes in a second. Jalen Waddle, another bad year, bad offense. Everything went wrong for the Dolphins. Could end up on a new team. Trey Harris, the rookie for the Chargers, a big play downfield depending on Quentin Johnston and his health / situation and what happens there. Basically, Trey Harris, if he ends up being the number 2 for the Chargers. And then similarly, if he ends up being the number 2 for the Broncos, Pat Bryant, as he came on late in the season. But point being, all those guys worth buying, again, relative to value. So let's talk sells. And on the flip side, because I think the perceived value is through the roof, and if you go all the way back to the rookie year he was drafted, you know I like Malik Willis, but people are going nuts for him, especially in Superflex right now, assuming the best case scenario. We've seen this before. We've seen quarterbacks switch teams. We've seen quarterbacks that looked good in backup duty, fill-ins when injuries, and then they go to a team and it's all on them and it falls apart. And I actually don't think that'll necessarily happen, and I'm rooting for it not to happen, but Malik Willis is a huge value right now. Javonte Williams is, again, this is going to be relative because some people will be like, oh man, that was great coming off that year, but can he do it again? For me, can he do it again? Will he be back with the Cowboys? DeAndre Swift was a huge value last year. If anybody has him as a mid-upper RB2, you sell because he might not be back with the Bears. That situation's cloudy. And, of course, DeAndre Swift is more reliant on efficiency than volume. Chase Brown, I mentioned. Woody Marks, another one that I'm a fan of, but depending on what they do there, if they try to use Nick Chubb coming back from his injury next year, if they add another piece because maybe they're not enamored with Woody Marks. And if you look at Woody Marks, as much as I do like his play, wasn't the most efficient. So somebody that should be more volume reliant, and if the volume isn't there next year, there you go, staying with this team, Nico Collins, mostly just because he can't stay healthy. And people are still giving top 5, 6, 7 wide receiver value for him. So if I can get that, I'm getting away. I love Nico Collins, but I hate the injuries with him. Chris Olave, was a big fan of buying low last year, both in redraft and Dynasty, but coming off that year where basically everything clicked right with Tyler Shuck and finally got the touchdowns and was finally a healthy Chris Olave. It's kind of a peak value situation. I do think Chris Olave can be a wide receiver 1 again. He has the talent, but peak value situation if out there. Cortland Sutton's getting up there in age and also touchdown reliance to a degree, and Bo Nix kind of starting to spread the ball around a little bit more. Troy Franklin, Patrick Bryant, if they add another piece because it's Sean Payton. And then 2 more. Alec Pierce, another one people are going nuts for, similar to Malik Willis. Where is he going to end up? Coming off a huge year. Very big play reliant, very touchdown reliant. Not saying that he can't do it with another team. Not saying he can't continue to be that kind of guy. Deshaun Jackson kind of realm, or actually more so, I was going to say Devontae Smith kind of realm, and it went to Deshaun Jackson. We don't know his landing spot as of right now, and he could go to a team where the number 2 just isn't used as much. He was essentially used as a number 1 for quite a few weeks with the Colts. Just say, like if you can get top 20 wide receiver value for Alec Pierce, and there are some people out there who will pay it, again, relative to the cost, get away. Kyle Pitts is another one. He's a free agent. Even if he's back with the Falcons, a lot of it came in the one game, and it was a lot of the use that the Falcons were starting to use him. You heard me say this on this podcast. They're using him kind of like a power forward in football. Who knows if he ends up on a new team, if they'll do the same. So Kyle Pitts, if somebody needs tight ends and you have tight end depth, get away from him. All right, let's talk coaching changes. And there are a lot, more than I ever remember in my career. I'm not going to go deep into all of it. Actually, I'm pretty much not going to go deep in general. I'm just going to touch on what this might mean. And some of them we might not know, / we already know who the person is. And I don't need to go too deep into that. Just going to go alphabetical for the teams. Arizona Cardinals, Mike LaFleur. He comes from Sean McVay, so you can have the excitement there, but we don't have really much of anything to go with Mike LaFleur. Behind McVay, we can hope for more 3 wide with the Cardinals, but at the same time, does that mean anything when you have Trey McBride? And that's why I said it. Like, what does that actually mean? Backfield, mentioned Benson and Connor before. Long and simple story short, LaFleur is going to be see how it goes. We're hoping for the best and continues to see the Sean McVay success of coaches leaving him, but this one is mostly speculative. The Atlanta Falcons get Stefanski and Tommy Rees with Tanner Engstrand added on, by the way. I actually think Stefanski got too much hate for the Browns. Look at what he did with that team. And he was coach of the year with the Browns, to let you guys know. Tommy Rees, though, these guys a little bit run heavy. Will that carry over to Atlanta? Probably. You do have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. They have to see how this plays out again with Kyle Pitts. What happens at wide receiver? Is Mooney going to be the number 2 now healthy? Took half the year. That was also great news for us to know. That took half the year to find out about that separated shoulder. But Engstrand as well. I don't have a lot to work with the Jets, so I understand that they moved on from him. But this one's a optimistic, but let's not go crazy type. Like, this isn't. I don't expect a lot of differences for the Falcons, I'll put it that way. Going to Baltimore for Minter and Declan Doyle. The Doyle piece is the interesting one, especially Minter being a defensive option. But Doyle was the offensive coordinator, didn't call the plays with the Bears, but Cole Kmet raved about Doyle. And I know it's coming from Cole Kmet, and it's coming from a former player. But he was under Doyle. He was under Ben Johnson. So we can have hope here for the Baltimore Ravens in this. Like Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson. We've already seen MVP Lamar Jackson. And Zay Flowers finally was catching some touchdowns late in the year. And Zay Flowers finally finished as a wide receiver 1. But the biggest thing here is maybe finally we can see another wide receiver value or the return of value for Mark Andrews. I'm optimistic for both of those potentials, especially with Isaiah Likely being a free agent. The Buffalo Bills, Joe Brady and Pete Carmichael. Carmichael was with the Saints for a long time, 2009 and 2023. And yes, he had Drew Brees, but he's also been able to do things in that offense without Drew Brees and with mixed and matched options there. And then the Denver Broncos, not as the offensive coordinator, but assistant over there for the past 2 seasons under Sean Payton again. So you expect a lot of Sean Payton-ish for the Buffalo Bills, which, what do we know about Sean Payton? And what do we know about that whole? They love their big slot options. Michael Thomas, Marquise Colston, the drafting of Pat Bryant. So watch that one depending on what the Bills do in free agency or who they add there. That would be the intriguing piece for me. The Cleveland Browns, Todd Monken and Travis Switzer. Switzer, run game coordinator, so run heavy again, but the Browns already run heavy. I mean, we could hope for better for Monken, but this one's a very much wait and see. Monken's going to be calling the plays. It's a passing Monken with a running Switzer. That's the mesh between there. So that's kind of nice to see that Monken's not going to take everything on himself, but this is going to, what are the pieces going to be in general? Actually, go back to Quinshon Judkins, depending if you can buy low in him on Dynasty or next year in redraft. This is going to be interesting. Detroit Lions got Drew Petzing to take over for the offensive coordinator. He is run heavy, play action, a good amount of tight end use. This is a hopeful opportunity to get some value back for Sam Laporta. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is Jahmyr Gibbs. But the interesting thing here is if Sam Laporta has a huge bounce back under Petzing, this might hurt Jameson Williams. Hopefully, Petzing uses Jameson Williams just like Dan Campbell did and not just send him downfield on go routes the entire time. But this one will be one worth watching because it's hard for two wide receivers and a tight end to all have huge value and put up 900, 1,000 yards. You guys might have seen the article I wrote about that. But Petzing could be good for Laporta. The Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator. Bieniemy is back. We know that. Chargers, Mike McDaniel. He's the offensive coordinator. Thumbs up. Marion Hampton, I have as a top 10 running back for next year. He might be a buy low in Dynasty, but probably not because people love him and he's coming. It's a rookie season. But thumbs up for the Chargers, which is why I go back to Trey Harris. Clint Kubiak, as we know, is taking over for the Raiders. More run-heavy approach than most, but hey, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, thumbs up. We'll have to see what they do at wide receiver there. Miami Dolphins, Halfley and Bobby Slowick. Slowick is kind of a Shanahan-y type of zone-based offense, a lot of pre-motion and play action. That is good for the wide receivers. But who are the wide receivers? Who's the quarterback? A lot of questions to be answered on the actual skill position players. But we'll have to see. That's what we expect with Slowick, so we should probably expect the offense to be designed around that. The Giants, as you know, just recently, John Harbaugh and added Matt Nagy, and a lot of people are like, I'm Matt Nagy. And you know what? As trying to hope to come back to being a Giants fan and saying I was 50-50, let me see how this plays out. This kind of pushed Harbaugh and this hires up until this point had me at like 60%. This pulled me back to 50-50 because Nagy is, Nagy. But hopefully can develop Jackson Dart. Similar to Patrick Mahomes, let him do what Patrick Mahomes did. I'm not saying Jackson Dart's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying, let him kind of freelance in the offense and get the best out of it. But at the same time, we do want to see Dart stay healthy. I don't think it's the worst hire. It's not an imaginative hire, but there's been a lot of talk real quick to go to the Cliff Kingsbury. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before. Kingsbury's kind of like, it's kind of the scripted first series for a team is like once the offense is figured out by the NFL, which continues to happen for Kingsbury, it's almost like good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. He needs more. He needs more to his game. He needs to get more in the run game department. So maybe Kingsbury goes back to college. I don't know, gets more, but I don't think this is the worst hire. The Jets, Frank Wright. You know what? I know the Jets are probably thinking the same thing with the Giants with Nagy. Whatever. He developed Rivers. Well, Rivers was a good talent anyway, but Carson Wentz, the Colts were top 11 in EPA, yards, scoring, rushing, red zone, 15th in passing. At the end, right before, though, when they got Matt Ryan, they stunk 30th, 32nd in a lot of those. Well, there's also Matt Ryan at the end of his career. So I don't know which way you want to look at it. He's developing quarterback is his calling card, but what did the Jets have at quarterback? And who might it be? So, you know what? Frank Reich, okay, cool, whatever. I don't know. The Jets, I'm sorry, fans. And maybe they surprise us with pieces they can add or figure out the quarterback position. But let's move on. Philadelphia Eagles, Sean Mannion. You know what? This is really tough because we don't have anything to go with outside of what happened in the Senior Bowl, and it's the Senior Bowl, so how much can you get out of that? The one thing is it's pretty much a 50-50 pass-run split. The interesting thing is, though, and again, it's a limited time to implement any offense and kind of, do what you can do with the skill position players. But the offense looked kind of Rams, San Francisco-ish in the fact that passing from shotgun a lot, under center to run a lot. You're using that to hopefully when you're under center to get the linebackers and everybody to pull in. Decent tight end use. So there you go. Dallas Goedert, another valuable year for him, especially if A.J. Brown is gone, even though he's later in his career. It's going to be interesting because that's also could be bad, obviously, because you're kind of telling the defense what you're planning. And, of course, it's not 100%, so that's where you throw them off. I'm just saying, it's not a guarantee for it to hit. Be interested to see what the Eagles do, but I think thumbs up ish for now. Excited. Zone wide receivers, too. I don't know if that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Again, if they get rid of A.J. Brown, do they bring in not necessarily Jalen Waddle, but a Jalen Waddle type for more over the middle of the field? That could be very, very interesting. Something to watch there. Pittsburgh Steelers are going Mike McCarthy. We know Mike McCarthy is 3 wide receiver heavy, and he moves his wide receivers around a lot, and more so 1 tight end, which maybe that clears things up and we can get back to Freiermuth or something. But I say I don't know here, because even if they bring back DK Metcalf, then what? I'm assuming they're adding wide receivers, and that's going to be interesting, because the number 2 would be where I would be intrigued for the wide receivers, because it's probably not Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson. And then Roman Wilson, the final thread of his career hanging on here, and maybe McCarthy gives him one more chance. But I don't think DK Metcalf, Austin, and Roman Wilson are the answer of a 3 wide receiver set for Mike McCarthy. So watch for that. That could be an interesting value of who ends up there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring in Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator, another former student of the Sean McVay, which shows that it could be hit or miss coming over from Falcons. It was 3 wide receiver. It was, again, to go that route from similar to the Rams, but he kind of did a little bit more 12 last year. Good news here is high tempo, zone running backs, so we could watch for that with the backfield. The Tennessee Titans went Robert Saleh and Dable, as you know. Dable loves to vary his rushing attack. We do know he does play action a lot. The RPOs, the crossing routes with mesh concepts to open up wide receivers. So good news, Cam Ward. That's why I think is good buy low. This will be very interesting to see. And there was the report that Brian Dable wanted to go heavy, and the Giants tried to go heavy to go get Cam Ward with the number 1 pick. So this is going to be very interesting. DK could be a breakout wide receiver next year. So if he gets usage like Wan'Dale Robinson, depending on what they do, Calvin Ridley, health, and all that, point being, other wide receivers are going to happen, and we'll have to figure that out. But I think Dable's use with DK could be intriguing. And then, of course, have to see how the running back system plays out. But Tajay Spears is still there. Whether or not they bring back Tony Pollard or do something else, could see his timeshare split, probably 60-40. So we'll have to see how the backfield finishes there. And then the Washington Commanders with David Blau. This guy has learned from Kingsbury, Ben Johnson, and Kevin O'Connell, and all the reports are this dude is a genius. Remembers the Sean McVay type of brain. I think Commanders with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, both good buy lows and everything, it'd be very intriguing. Deebo Samuel, and if they add something to the backfield, or Jakari Krosky-Merritt, it finally breaks out next year like people hoped he would as a rookie. But hey, we told you on this podcast, Ben Standig told you to be patient with Jakari Krosky-Merritt. But anyway, point being, I think the Commanders offense is going to be fun to watch. This, of all of the intriguings, we might not know what's going to happen because we don't know for sure for Blau. For all of these situations where I think might be the one that's overlooked with the potential most upside, I think it's the Washington Commanders. So that rounds things out for this podcast. Like I said, I'll be back to talk way too early rankings for 2026 because that's what we do. And everybody could argue about them, hate on them. And then we'll take a little bit of a break, talk some free agency, more other topics. If you want to shoot them my way, feel free to tweet at me. I say that, and who knows how well this has been. I don't see many tweets anymore. I don't know what. I think it's just broken or everybody left. So you can email me. It's very easy to figure out. J. Ciely, J, the letter J, Ciely, my last name, over at The Athletic. If you want any topic suggestions for this podcast, I'm open to them because I am a man of the people. No, seriously, thank you again for getting this nominated as a finalist because you guys listen and I love you all. And if you haven't seen on Instagram at All In Kid to go see the new pup that we got for Nicole. Nicole has a new dog. We have a new dog, but it's Nicole's dog. Ziggy is one of the cutest dogs in the world. Very, very, very close 1B to the 1A of Barkley. Fly pup, of course.